All right, so this is Tim Grotman, and this is the OUYA Hangout Developer Support Hangout for July 15th, 2013. And I was going to talk about a bunch of different engines today. So plan on starting out with GameMaker, showing the interface, seeing how the examples are hooked up. After that one, MonoGame, and there's Corona, and there's a bunch of new examples, and documentation, all kinds of stuff. So that's the agenda. And let's get started. So I'll start by sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, so GameMaker. GameMaker is different after using Unity for so long. I guess I'll start with, I have a page for the documentation. So on the forums, like part of my signature, I've been including like this thing at the bottom that's just kind of growing. And in the signature, there's a link for the different engines. And if we go to GameMaker, this documentation kind of appears when you go into the regular documentation under the game engines. So I've added some of my content to the setup docs. So like under setup, there's a lot of common stuff that's not specific to engines. So there's driver setup and for Mac and Windows, and then setting up your capture software and some video editing thing. And hopefully this helps people get started with plugging in their OUYAs. Hey, Marco. And then I added the videos for Unity right at the top there, and then I've been updating documentation to go for the new input system and the low latency input, and making that more up to date. Okay, so back to GameMaker. So there's this GameMaker page now, and it's got the useful links to get the stuff. So I created a new GitHub repository for the, basically, let's go in there. I want a new window. Okay, so OUYA SDK examples is kind of like a new destination repository thing for all the different engines. So when I'm putting in new engines, they're dropping in here. So the first directory off here would be like the platform, and then you go right into the examples. And to start with each example, I'm adding an in-app purchase example and a virtual controller example. So now with GameMaker, you can do a file export, and it does a project, and it creates this GMZ file, which is like a zip project export file. But then I also check in the full directory of contents, so I can have version control on that. And so yeah, so there's a virtual controller example in there now, and I'll show you that example. There's other useful links, like before you get started, you want to actually download the latest version of GameMaker. So it's from Yo-Yo Games, and there's the download link. There's a thing in the start bar after you first install it. Well, I don't know if I can drag it down, but anyways, it has a GameMaker icon in your start bar, and if you right-click that, there's a pop-up that comes up, and you can pick whether you want to use the latest beta version or the latest stable version, and then that allows you to use that here. I'll show you what that looks like by taking a screenshot, because that's the only way I'm getting it down there. Okay, 1 second while I'll beautify my screenshot here to show just the part that you want to see. Okay, and crop it. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. No. Okay, so down here, this guy is the Game Maker icon. You right-click it, and you get this pop-up. And then you can pick the beta channel for, like, that's where the new stuff's coming in. So right now, in-app purchases for Game Maker are kind of, there's a post in the Game Maker forums that you follow. And you've got to like hand edit some files, and you edit some Java, and you edit some scripts, and it's a pretty involved process where as those scripts get put into the build, they'll show up in beta, and you'll get it through that. Anyways, your standard patching system or whatever. Okay, so after you get Game Maker, then here, I'll start from the beginning here of just launching it. It's killing my processes. Okay, cool. So I'm using Game Maker Studio. I'm sure it's one of those engines that has different versions or whatever. Anyways, Game Maker Studio. Come on, Game Maker. All right, I should probably start these demos like, not everything you see here is going to work the first time. So there we go. There we go. Close. Cancel. I just want to show the splash wizard that comes up at the beginning. There we go. Okay, Game Maker Studio. So it opened for a second, and oh, here we go. I'll edit that part out. It'll be like, and you click this button, and bam, there it goes. All right. Anyways, you get here. This is the Game Maker interface, and then you can just open your different. It's got a browser or whatever, and then I've got a recent history, so I can go right to the example. And then here we go, Game Maker. All right, so it's your usual, like, you've got your project hierarchy over here. There's some useful stuff, like by default, they'll probably have the Windows platform selected, so you go down and you switch, click Android. And then there's some settings kind of tucked away. So this resource thing has a change, so resources, change global game settings, and you go into there. And then you'll find the Android tab. And it's got several sub-tabs here, I guess. Okay, so it's on the General tab. Here's where you change your icon and your package name. And one important thing is this Bluetooth, gamepad, iCAD support. You check that if you want it to work with the OUYA controller. And that's all you have to do there. And then there's another thing, more preferences under File Preferences. And you go to the Android tab, and here's where you put in your SDK location, your JDK, your key store. I recorded some setup videos about the key store. I've got it set up using my debug key store, which, well, if it wasn't using this one, in your .android folder, you'll find the debug key store. And on that one, the password is Android, and the alias password is Android. And that way, when you build, you don't have to type in your password. And then when you change some settings, there's it does a check to make sure everything's good, and you hit OK. And then the Android portion is all set up. Okay, so kind of like how Unity has scenes. I have to relate everything to Unity, right? GameMaker has rooms. So you create rooms, and I've created a room that holds the kind of the object instances for the things that you're going to put in your GameMaker game. And so once you make an empty room, then you go and you get to the object part. And for objects, I ended up making in this example here, it's the virtual controller example. So I made a bunch of different objects for the controllers. And GameMaker is kind of like a visual interface tool. So if you click in your, once you make your object, let's say, I guess I'll make an object. So you can create an object like menu object. You can name it, you can attach it to a sprite. You pick it from the sprite list. And then hit OK. And then now that you have the new object, then over in your room, you can drag the object over to here, or I think, what do? I go to objects, pick the object from a list, and then wherever you click, it puts that object, usually. There we go. All right, so you click, and then it creates an instance of that object. And then you can edit those object properties. And there's all these icons for all the different events and things you can attach to your objects. And the ones that I use are, there's usually like a create event. So I'll have a create event, and then there's this miscellaneous, add some code to it. And then I add code to it. So let's look at one of the other ones that I've done. Okay, sure. So for a controller, it's got these events. So yeah, so you add an event, and you kind of pick what kind of event you want to tie it to. And then once you have an event, then there's all these different icons that you can add and customize it. So for the controllers, I'm interested in each different controller. The only thing that's different between controllers is the player number. So I have a create event, and in that create event, when the object is created, I have this executed piece of code, which I got from control, let's see, code. Is it going to give me a tooltip? I don't know. I think there's usually a tooltip here. But because of the capture software, it's not popping up. Anyways, once you add the custom piece of code, you can double click it. And here is where I put the custom code. So like for all my different controllers, I've got a script that I did, and then each one just has this execute custom code to set the player number. And then I overrode this draw event thing because so with objects, they have an attached sprite, like an image to draw. And I wanted to kind of control what images are being drawn based on the buttons that are pressed. So hooking into the draw event, I can, as soon as you have a draw event, you override the existing, like the sprite that you use in this drop-down thing. And then it'll use whatever you have in your draw event. And then I specified a sprite here so that in the room it was easier to place stuff, because then you have like a little avatar to help with your placement. Okay, so there's one other part, which is this scripts. And here with the scripts, okay, I guess it's this draw thing. Okay, so within events, you have properties for each event, and in this event, it's execute scripts, and then it just kind of populates in the drop-down to reference the script, and I pick, oh, run the virtual controller draw script, and that guy. Then we've, oh, come down. Okay, cancel. Okay, and then here's where you can, if you double click the script, you can edit it in the text editor, and it's got validation. And so I've got, in the example, it has like a disabled type controller to show it kind of semi-transparent when the controller is not connected. And then in the API, if it is connected, then draw the full like visible controller at like full opacity, or yeah, full opacity. Anyways, it'll draw that one. Otherwise, the transparent one. And this draw sprite is what I use to draw the sprites, and it has an index, and that index kind of links to these sprite things. So in the ODK, it's got a bunch of different example images and stuff for that virtual controller example, and you can drag it over to the sprite section from Explorer, and it'll automatically import all your sprites, which were PNG files, and it prefixes this with a sprite 0 through 18 or whatever. And those numbers indicate the index that you use over here. It's kind of like a database ID that increments. So I noticed, like, if I delete these and I re-import it, the index continues from 18. So it just keeps going. So if you do it right the first time, you can start from 0. Otherwise, you get a random number, well, auto-increment a number, and then you reference it from this ID. And let's see what else. There's the it has some parameters, and then XY coordinates, because we're drawing in 2D. And then, yeah, so based on these different constants, we're checking for whether buttons or D-pads are pressed, and then it will display that sprite, which is an overlay on top of the controller image. And then, so there's checking for button presses, and then down below, then I have grabbing the access values here. And I suppose I should show you what the controller looks like for the sprite that we're drawing. So it has this orientation of, and so when the input's coming in, I just kind of rotate it so that it matches the orientation of the image, so that when you move the sticks around, it'll visually make sense. And so there's a little bit of rotation math here, and then it takes the index values, and then it positions the sprites, and that's kind of the whole virtual controller example in monogame. You guys could probably, if you want to know more about the access stuff, or GameMaker, you can always pipe in if I've totally lost anybody. Okay. So yeah, so project view, you've got your images over here, your custom scripts, the different objects that you put into your room, and then it looks like I deleted, oh, there we go. And then you can just right-click and delete any extra objects that you might click. And if you want to edit the properties for any of these objects in the scene room, just right-click, edit object, and then you can double-click, see the custom code. And there you can see, like, where I set the var player. Guess I could show you the process of adding one of these events. So add event, create event. Oh, it's probably already there. Let's start with an object that doesn't have that, so I don't mess up my pristine scene. Okay, so new object, when I click, press it, okay. Then right click, and then add event on create. Okay, and then I had done a control object thingy. Oh, that was weird. Okay, I guess you just click and drag the object over here, and then it attaches it to the create event, and then it automatically pops open this editor where you can add your custom code, which is in GameMaker script. It's like a combination between C and Java. And here you can add like different events for like on destroy. Stepping is kind of like update events. So like every few whatever, you can have something happen. You can tie in mouse events, key press events, and then the draw one is what I use to display different sprites depending on what was there. Because by default, every object in the scene is just linked with a single sprite. And by being able to add a custom draw script, okay, custom draw script, it's actually displaying a combination of multiple sprites. Okay, so that's kind of it for GameMaker. So the next engine would probably be MonoGame, and that one I already have a video started. Let's see. Okay, so if we go back to the documentation, you can click on MonoGame, and I did like a 40-minute video of the same kind of thing that we just went through for GameMaker about how to script from scratch a virtual controller example. And I did leave out the initial steps, which I could probably show you now. Okay, so MonoGame is kind of cool because it's integrated into Visual Studio. So all you need is a Visual Studio. So I'll open one of those. Okay. Visual Studio. Okay. Before you launch Visual Studio, I suppose, there are some downloads that you want to get. So basically this Mono for Android, when you install this guy, it takes a while, but it installs all the Visual Studio templates that you need to work with MonoGame, and that makes it super awesome. So once you install that guy, then when you do a new project, you've got all the MonoGame templates on there. So you can just go, okay, I want to do a MonoGame for OUYA project, and it's already got like some pre-set up things, like the bundle identifier is already set up so that it shows in the right category and it's already the right orientation and that kind of thing. So I guess I'll make one. New folder, demo. MonoGame demo. Okay. So this is going to go and create like the project file, and it creates a activity for you, and it creates a game file. And MonoGame is the same API that you're familiar with if you've done any XNA work. So the whole point is you can take your XNA project, you rip out the Windows windowing code, and you replace it with the activity code, and then you're pretty much done after you convert all the content over. Okay, so now that you've got your monogame project, you can go to its properties, and here's where you set your minimum Android target. And there's the manifest over here. And if you say, if you click to add one, here's where you can put your application name and your package name. And your version, okay, and the version name. And then you can just check the permissions that you want to add. Like, if you want to inject events, that would be cool. Or give it internet access or that kind of thing. Anyways, the regular Android permissions that you're used to. Okay, so that's basically the manifest. All this other stuff isn't very common. Okay, and then you have this activity source file, and it's pretty crazy how this stuff works. It's like monogame is a JNI wrapper around the Java activity stuff, and it lets you do straight C#. And anytime you write any C# code, it's like doing JNI stuff in the background automatically. And another cool thing about monogame is all the source, well, it's open source or whatever, and if you run into any feature that's not there, you can just add it to the source. Like one example of that was like the system button. It's the XNA framework, and so they have like this button state object that you get the button state, but there was no state on there to get the system button press to open the pause menu. And so you just crack open one of these references here, which is the Mono Android framework and the monogame framework. And then I was able to add a event handler to the activity that you inherit from, and then add an event so that when you push the system button, you can catch it and handle it. And all that took is you just modify the code and then replace the reference, and then you're good to go. Which, I don't know, compared to other things, this seems easier than doing a new build of whatever engine you're in or something. I don't know. Okay. So anyways, you've got your activity and you've got your access to the game logic, and then regular XNA stuff. So you have your game. It's got like an initialize, a step for loading and unloading content. It's got your usual update loop, and then the draw event. So this is kind of where I added all the drawing of the controller stuff in the virtual controller example. So that's probably, if I just go to that example, it's got code in there. I was adding a set resolution example too. Let's see. Okay, so if I hop into the OUYA SDK examples, monogame, virtual controller. Yep, okay. Okay, sure. All right, so for the example, it's mostly the same. I don't think I customized too much here. Okay, except for the game, and then I just made a virtual controller sprite that kind of, you'll see this a lot. It's like, okay, there's a draw in all these different examples. It's got a draw based on if certain buttons are pressed, then you draw a certain sprite or not. And then followed by the orientation thing where, okay, get the degrees, calculate cosine and sine, and then it's basically rotating it by 135 degrees on the whatever axis I was rotating, probably the y-axis, and drawing the new position. And then I do something like when you're using the sticks and the axis values, I've put a multiplier on that so that it moves a certain distance, because those values are normalized, and once you're on the screen, you want it relative to your window size. But that's getting a little too much into this stuff. Okay, so basically, you get a sprite batch in monogame, and you can do draw events. I guess that's all I was going to say there. And then the game has the same stuff. Okay, so the key things are, you have your constructor. It constructs sets the orientation, sets this graphic device manager thing. And then you have your initialize code, where I just create instances of this sprite thing. I have a separate step for loading content, and that's when it loads the content, and that kind of gets into this content thing. So content, yes. With XNA, there's like if you have a project, and you would normally go, well, wait, I'm kind of adding to it, let's see. And yeah, I guess new project. So normally you do a content project. Since I'm in 2012, I don't think the templates are set up to do that. So you might have to downgrade to Visual Studio 2010 right now to get the template working for a content project. Otherwise, I did this other trick, which is in the video, where I do it through a batch file, which takes the source assets and it builds these XNB files, which are what XNA uses it's the XNA format for content. And once you build an XNB file, whether you use the content project or not, it gets included in your content, and then you can reference it with this path thing. Just leaves out the extension. And then it loads, you can load sprites, you can load fonts and audio and all kinds of things. Okay, and once you have your content loaded, you might have an update loop to do certain things, like change UI focus or something. And then your draw event, and in here I just loop through all the controllers and I tell them to draw. And that's the end of that example. I'll show you my special script. Let's see. Okay. I'll find the place and I'll pop it over here. Okay. So in the SDK examples, pop into monogame, the virtual controller example, and here's where I have those custom scripts. So I've got the XMB builder script, which is a command line thing. Okay, so monogame has this thing called monogame content builder, and it's an executable that basically it takes these response files. And I only have one example here, but I'll have to add to the documentation. I use these response files to encode PNGs to those XMB files. I also made some for doing the font thing and some for doing the audio. So the response file takes like Android, the reach profile, you have input or output directories and some options, but then the ones that change are this importer. So if you open up the monogame content builder and you just look for search for importers, you can find out what importers to use and what processor to use. Or if you already have an XNA content project, these things would show right in the properties for that asset. It tells it how to encode, what encoder to use to process the files, along with any processor params would be right in Visual Studio. I suppose I don't have any examples of that that I can show, I guess. but you would just take it right from the properties and plug it in here. Or you can just wait for those templates to show up in Visual Studio 2012, either or. Okay. So I guess that's kind of a mono game. I can show you Corona now. I do the Corona stuff on Mac, so I'll have to switch to my Mac here. Ah, yes. Okay. So again, I've got a page for switch keyboards here. Let's see. All right, hang on one second. Let me find the right place so I don't show like email and stuff. Okay. Okay, now you can see. All right, so under game engines, Corona. Okay, so I have checked in examples here for the virtual controller, and then there's the different resource files. When I first started Corona, that was it's a Lua script, so got to learn Lua script. But there's some great video tutorials. So first, okay, so this crash course is great. It doesn't take very long, and you can get it straight through, like how to have a spaceship and fly around and have collisions and that kind of stuff. And then below this, they've got Lua Bootcamp, and that was really the main thing, because all these different examples are basically the same, but you need to know how to do like an if block and an array and how to draw certain things, which drawing is up in the game example stuff, but just flow control and stuff. Anyways, you follow the Lua Bootcamp, and then you can read Lua script, which looks like this, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, back to the examples. There are the docs. So you want to install Corona, which I suppose is that SDK link here. Download free to publish. Okay, so you install that, and then it goes to your apps, and then you have Corona Simulator. So let's see. So application, Corona SDK, and then you run the Corona Simulator, and then that kind of loads this thing. And it's got a drop down for the different devices that you use, and you can switch between them. But I'm using this whatever device to preview. And okay, let's see. So once your simulator is open, you can go to your recent projects or just open a project, and you can go right into the virtual controller example, which these are all the files for the whole project, which is kind of nice. It's just got the configuration Lua script, which kind of handles the orientation of the game. I'll show you that in Outlaw in a second. And then the main Lua script that has the game logic, and then just a bunch of all the PNGs, sprites that are used from the other examples are in there. Okay, so back to the docs here. I think I have a link to Outlaw. Okay, the Outlaw IDE. So that's just an IDE that knows how to do Lua script that works with Corona. It has the syntax highlighting, which is pretty good. Okay, so you just import into there, and then there's that config Lua script. Really, I don't have a lot in here other than setting the width, height, scale, and FPS, I guess. And then the main script. This is one of those languages it looks like Perl or or at least how it's used here, where it's just, what do you call that, procedural. It's not object-oriented. And dash dash is for a comment, kind of like SQL. And then you define your local functions. And this is already, okay, so this is a virtual controller example. And so we define some functions so that, okay, so like I have a function to position sprites and set their alphas and scales, and then a common function to create the controller. And here's how we load the all the different sprites for the controller example. It's just display.new image, and it returns a sprite. And so they're all labeled. That way we can detect the different button presses and display sprites as we need them. And they're part of this local sprite object thing that is also returned when you call this function. So then by default, when the app starts up, it's going to load all the different sprites, and then it'll make the controller visible and all the other buttons not visible, except for the two sticks, which are inactive, and then have an active orange, like active state. And then here, since it's back into the, oh, that's right, it's in the inline code, I create an array, or call it a table, with each of the controllers. OUYA is 1 based when you reference arrays, so the index starts at 1. I've got like a couple helper functions for fading in the sprites and fading out for when you push buttons. And then I have a button event when key presses are pushed. And it's in a local function, so it's not executed yet. And after all that, at the very bottom, I've got add event listener. Ignore this access thing. I haven't got the access working yet. But I add an event listener for key codes. It calls this on key event, and then we're right into this, the usual thing of got some debug data while I figure this out. One cool thing is that I like is this permanent string ID, so that it gets a unique ID for the controller, and even if you unplug it and plug it back in, it's going to be the same, which is nice for stuff. Okay. Anyways, I have a check to see if the controllers are initialized, otherwise it just bails out. I'm mapping from the joystick number to the array index, and again, it's 1 based. So once you figure out what the event controller is, get that controller. Bail if it's nil. Nil is their null. Oh yeah, and you'll notice like syntax stuff. There's no curly braces on the if. It's just if, then, and else, and if else. Okay, then we have the D-pads, and there's just a key event. So I have access to the key name, key code, that kind of thing. I haven't decided which I want to use yet. I could do the whole, like, the other engines where I get the device name and have the big switch blocks to figure out what the mappings are. It's up in the air. Right now, it's only working with the OUYA controller because it's still figuring it out. So, okay, so if they push a, well, here I'll start with one of these. So if they push the down D-pad, I just call that helper function, which fades in the D-pad down sprite, and then it fades back out. So actually this function, it will sets the alpha to 1, so it's full bright, and then fades it out. So these are all the same for the D-pads. And then for the sticks, because they have an active and an inactive sprite, I do a crossfade thing. So it fades in the orange when you push it, and then fades out the inactive, and then switches around. And yeah, so that's all the different buttons. And that's kind of it. It needs a couple other things, like getting the access values and then doing that rotation thing and then that virtual controller example will be done. So this stuff will all work in the free version of Corona. And then the in-app purchase stuff, which is kind of beyond this intro scope, I guess, is actually the commercial enterprise version of Corona, because I've got to write like custom Java and activity and do some native stuff, and you need the enterprise version. But I can show you what that looks like. It's you install the enterprise SDK, and basically it's just a set of scripts and examples. And if you take a look at the samples are always nice. So it's got the a simple Lua extension. That's kind of cool. So it's got the Corona scripts, kind of like if you noticed from before. You know what? I think this is lagging behind a little bit. Let me click the live. If you see the screen share lagging, you gotta let me know, because that likes to uncheck itself. Okay. So it's got a Lua script in here, and it loads some images and stuff, but this Corona example, oh, come on, I can't click the Unitron. That should sound familiar, right? Unity used to use Unitron before MonoDevelop. Here we go. Come on. This is actually stuff I need to do still. Don't tell me it's empty. Ah, there we go. That was the event log. Oh, come on. Really? Where did it go? Alright, going back in. Okay, so this is the whatever, and then I clicked on the thing, and then it opened? Alright. That is bizarre. Everybody knows click on the thing, right? I guess. Okay. So this is invoking Java from the Lua script, and so the in-app purchase stuff is going to do the same thing, where it's going to have some functions defined in Java. I'll try and mirror what I did with Unity probably, and then it'll invoke it and have callbacks and be super easy, I guess. It'll be, if I use the same interface, it'll be similar to the documentation. It's stuff I'll figure out later, and it will be easy. Okay. But here you can see in Corona you can invoke Java and load your own jars and all that kind of stuff. You just have to use these interface things like async call Lua functions and these, I know these are Java functions that are defined in the Java. Okay, so this is the Corona stuff, and if I go up one level, then there's Android-specific code here. And if I go in the source, here we go. So here's where those functions that it's calling over here are defined. And that's all I'm going to show about that, because it could be insanely complex. Okay. That's Corona. I guess I'll switch back to Windows, and there's also this Nvidia Toolkit thing that I didn't document yet. Oh, maybe I did. Okay, so I'll show you that. I might have added something in the documentation about it. So back to the docs. Oh, the widget builder. I didn't want to plug that yet, though. Yeah, so there's this widget builder. I'll show it later. Hold on. I've only got 10 minutes left. I've got enough time to show you the Nvidia Toolkit stuff, which is pretty cool because you can write native activities right in Visual Studio and do debugging, which you can also do with monogame, but it does C++. So I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Oh, I just closed it. Don't you hate that? Okay.
Were you just showing the OUYA widget?
Yeah, I accidentally opened that window. I wasn't ready for it yet.
Oh.
Okay,
it's funny.
so,
I was just telling Eve about it.
Oh, that's funny in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, since I don't have a page dedicated for Android yet, maybe you could just show them that. That gives us like 10 minutes to mess around, anyways. I'll show the Nvidia Toolkit in the next Hangout. How's that sound? Like maybe next Monday. Okay, so I guess I'll be done. Go ahead and was that crazy or what? Like, do you learn some stuff?
Yeah, I learned that I don't like monogame engine.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
I got in there and it was like, oh, I see code again.
But yeah, I mean, it just looks like a lot of work to do something in that engine. But it's cool that you have all this stuff working though.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's tons of developers that really like the engine. I'm more of a visual engine type of person. That's why I like Unity.
Right. Yeah, monogame's definitely cool if you already have XNA. You've got your project that's already there and you just want to port it quick.
Yeah, that makes sense. The game maker, that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty visual. There's so many buttons that I don't know what they do. So I just use as soon as I can get into the code, I'm happy. So there's that code button and you drag it to your object. And then I was just using the create and draw events because that's all I needed. And then it does have, there's an in-app purchase example for that one too. But that, again, that's more involved because you're hacking their OUYA runnable.
Been a busy bee.
Yeah. oh, I got to show this one thing. All right. I probably already showed it, but I didn't show it in a Hangout. And that's the Unity examples for Rock Band. I added support for the Rock Band controllers. So
yeah, you showed that when we first started, didn't you?
Yeah, I just said there's videos at the top. It's kind of so my documentation style is I figure there's two different kinds of people, right? There's people that like to read a lot, and those people can scroll to the bottom, and then there's the people that don't read anything and just want to watch a video. And of course, everybody reads stuff, so not read anything, but if you just want to watch videos, you can watch those at the top. And then I took your suggestion. I put the links in the little description so you can see how long it's going to be before you get started.
Yeah, that's good.
I cut mine last night.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, some more stuff that's coming. I have there's lots of different examples in the Unity forums for Adobe Air. Adobe Air uses Eclipse, and so that's kind of cool. More Eclipse stuff. I guess I have to fill in an Android section for SDK examples that I did in Android.
Are you talking about Flex? I know Flex is built on Eclipse, but
okay. There's 3 different ways to do your Adobe Air stuff, and Flex is one. There's Flash develops one of them, and then this Adobe Air thing, and then there's Flash Builder, and yeah, all the stuff I haven't written up yet. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to play with it too much, but was able to mess around with it enough to get whoever was using it get their in-app purchase stuff working. So somebody knows what's going on, and they've got quite a few forum posts on Adobe Air.
Gotcha. Okay, show OUYA widgets.
Oh yeah. Okay. What's the website for that? OUYA widget?
.com.
All right. Yeah. So, everybody's gonna like submit their game at some point, right? And you kind of want a way to be able to see like how many likes and downloads you have for your game. And so Marco made this awesome Themeable widget builder thing that has a couple different modes, or a few different options here. So you can do like portrait, landscape mode. You can change the themes.
You can turn off the support developers. That's
Just,
if you just want your game to show up on your site.
yep. So you have.
But I encourage you to use the support developers.
Yeah, totally. So you have the single panel, and then support other developers will show like recent submitted games, which is cool. A way to see all the different games. And then at this point, there's a counter.
What are you looking for?
I was gonna. It's not working.
You should load Eve's game in here.
Oh yeah, but with the bundle ID.
ID.
All of a sudden, my mouse cursor isn't working.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was go to OUYA TV. I just want to say like, oh, and there's 243 games in the store right now. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But I can click on anything. Okay, so if we put in the Pingo thing, so that was.
You just wipe that.
Oh, does it autocomplete?
Yeah, it auto.
Oh my god, that's so awesome.
I was trying to tell you that last night.
Really? It's like, yeah, it autocompletes.
And then click go. Yeah.
Alright. Well, look at that.
See? Oh, it's so pretty.
Then you gotta figure out the perfect theme for it, let's see. I don't know if that's...
I had the guys from Towerfall using this earlier.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it's an exclusive. That's definitely cool. Let's see. Towerfall. Autocomplete. That's so fancy. Alright. Insane. Insane. That's getting a lot of traffic.
Yeah, the amount of likes they have is crazy.
Yeah, I smoked my brother on this one pretty bad, but he's been practicing, you can tell. Like that first day, it's the only time you want to... Yeah, then he has this thing where he takes all my arrows and...
I personally am not a big fan of pixel art game, but Towerfall's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then Bomb Squad. Finally it's got like this, trying to get past the onslaught stuff. And there's this tower defense type level. I got through the football games, and then it took both of us to get through the... No, I take that back. We couldn't get past it, and then I left the room, and he used my player as a decoy, and he got past it. So if I wasn't if I wasn't moving my guy at all, and yeah, that was crazy. All right, well that's exactly an hour there. So I'm gonna end the broadcast, and next week I was planning on probably the same time doing another one. Maybe I'll show the stuff I didn't show today, which is doing Android straight programming and maybe native activities and the Nvidia Toolkit and doing native activities in Visual Studio. Yeah, so that'll be next week. Need the little action thing. All right, action.